Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We're on an absolute mission today to completely demystify the modern retirement system. We are really going to pull back the curtain on the members, the history, and kind of the hidden mechanics of how you're actually supposed to fund your golden years. For decades, the script for retirement was pretty simple. You put in the time, and a company just took care of the rest. But somewhere along the line, those rules changed overnight, and nobody sent you the memo. So today, we're going to map out exactly what happened, and much more importantly, how you can navigate it. To really understand this shift, let's look at two generations of the exact same family. On the left here, we have Ray. Ray retired on a Friday, and on Monday morning, he watered his tomatoes and drank his coffee. He didn't check the stock market because, frankly, it just didn't matter. He gets a steady, guaranteed $3,200 pension check every single month. But on the right is his daughter, Cara. She works for the exact same company her dad did. But last night, at exactly 11:14 p.m., Cara was lying in bed, totally panicking, just refreshing her 401k app over and over as she watched $4,000 evaporate from her account. It's the same family, same work ethic. But while Ray got a check for life, Cara got a second, unpaid, highly stressful job.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the grand illusion of average versus median.
Okay, let's dive into this, because if you read the financial news right now, they paint a totally different picture. Financial headlines love to shout that American retirement is booming, celebrating a record 86% participation rate and boasting that the average 401k balance has climbed to a healthy $168,000. On paper, the machine looks like it's working flawlessly, right? Well, average is a sneaky mathematical trick. It just adds everyone together and divides by the total. If you and I are standing in an empty room and Jeff Bezos walks in, well, on average, the three of us are worth $70 billion. To find the honest number, the sober reality of the typical worker, you have to look at the median, and the median balance is just $44,000. The typical American is sitting on roughly a quarter of what those cheerful headlines promised.
Moving right along to Section 2, the accidental 401k.
So that massive gap between the $168,000 fantasy and the $44,000 reality begs a pretty huge question. How did we even get here? You might be tempted to look for some evil corporate villain who stole your pension in the dead of night, but the truth is actually much quieter, and honestly, in a way, far more unsettling. Let's trace the timeline. Back in 1978, Congress passed a totally boring tax bill. Buried inside was this little subsection called 401k, and it was literally just meant to let executives dodge taxes on some of their bonuses. 2 years later, a benefits consultant named Ted Bennett realized you could use this to let regular employees save a little extra. He called it a side dish or a garnish to the main course, which was, of course, the pension. But over the next few decades, for the vast majority of private sector workers, the pension didn't get improved, it got deleted. And that accidental little side dish was suddenly promoted to the entire meal.
Running a pension used to be a genuine, full-time profession. It required actuaries, market experts, and risk departments to calculate life expectancies and market cycles. Well, that entire professional department was essentially laid off, and their job was handed directly to you, unpaid and totally untrained. You were voluntold to be a fund manager between your day job and your kids' dentist appointments. Like the quote says, they just very politely handed you the wheel of a bus doing 70 miles per hour and went to sit in the back.
Which brings us perfectly to Section 3, the 3 hidden risks. We're going to break down exactly what got dumped in your lap.
By handing you the wheel, the system quietly handed you the liability. There are 3 terrifying hidden risks that were suddenly dumped right into Cara's lap when the 401k became the only game in town. The first risk is the quiet assassin of modern retirement, sequence of returns risk. Imagine 2 people who retire on the exact same day, both with $500,000, both withdrawing $40,000 a year to live. The only difference is pure blind luck. The first retiree hits a market crash in year 1. Their balance plummets to $300,000, but they still have to sell shares at the absolute bottom just to buy groceries. Because they keep carving chunks out of a shrinking pie, they are completely flat broke by age 78. The second person? Well, they retire into a couple of calm years, their account grows to $600,000 before a crash ever hits, and they actually die with more money than they started with. It's the same savings, same average return, but completely different destinies based entirely on timing.
The second risk is hiding behind a number that looks so incredibly small, your brain probably just dismisses it as a rounding error. 1%. When you see a 1% management fee on your mutual fund or target date fund, which, by the way, are just prepackaged bundles of stocks, it sounds completely harmless. But let's see what that invisible thief actually does over a 40-year career. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer scale of the math here. It is wild. That 1% doesn't just come out once. It comes out every single year, off your entire balance, including all the growth you would have earned on the money it already took. Over a career, that tiny sliver can quietly eat roughly a quarter of your final nest egg. Think about that. You did all the saving, you took all the market risk, you sweated every economic crash, and 25% of your life's reward walks out the door to pay a management team you've never even met. You essentially took all the risk just to buy a total stranger a very nice boat.
The third risk is honestly the most human one, our own behavior. The research firm Dalbar runs a study every year comparing what investment funds earn versus what the actual human investors in those funds earn. The investors constantly lose to their own investments. How? By panicking. When the market drops 20%, our brains literally scream at us to sell at the bottom to make the pain stop. Then we buy back in when it feels safe, which is always after prices have gone back up. Buy high, sell low. We also see this in record-high hardship withdrawals, where people eat massive penalties to pull cash out early. They aren't gambling, they're simply borrowing from their 70-year-old selves to pay their 35-year-old electric bill.
And just as a quick aside, we absolutely can't ignore the fourth, totally invisible risk, inflation. Over the last few years, prices in America went up more than 20%. So even if Cara's 401k balance held perfectly steady and she didn't lose a single dollar in the market, she's actually moving backwards. Standing completely still means her money silently lost a fifth of what it could actually buy.
All right, let's get into Section 4, Navigating the Reality.
So we have the history and we know the risks. Acknowledging this system is the first step. The next step is figuring out how to actually survive and thrive within it. Well, a single red market headline means entirely different things depending on where you're standing. If you're in your 20s and the market crashes 20%, that is not a disaster. That is a massive sale. A crash is just a coupon for you to buy cheap shares for the next 30 years. Now, if you're in your 40s or 50s, you're in the dangerous middle. You have a real balance to lose, but enough time to recover. The only thing that ruins you here is panic selling. But if you're in your late 50s or 60s, that sequence of returns risk we talked about is no longer a hypothetical concept. It is your literal reality, and you genuinely have to strategize around timing and preserving cash.
But, we also have to neutrally and soberly address the massive group that doesn't fit neatly into that table at all. Roughly 4 out of 10 adults in America have absolutely zero retirement accounts. No 401k to crash, no app to refresh at midnight. When the story of retirement was rewritten from a company promise to a DIY project, an enormous number of people were simply left without the income or resources to start building. This is a massive systemic redesign failure, not a personal one.
For many, the ultimate backup plan is Social Security. Ray's generation had the pension and Social Security, a real belt and suspenders approach. But look at this year, 2033. The Social Security's program's own trustees project that around 2033, the main trust fund will run short. That doesn't mean checks stop entirely, but it means that unless Congress acts to patch it, the incoming money will only cover a portion of benefits, translating to an automatic cut of roughly 20%. So the backup suspenders might be fraying just a bit.
Which brings us to Section 5, Taking Back Control, or as I like to call it, the playbook.
So, the crucial point is, enough with the doom scrolling. It is time to take back control. We know exactly what the machine looks like, we know what it costs, and we know its flaws. Let's reveal the exact practical levers you can pull right now to win the game. Here is your 4-step playbook. Step 1, get the full employer match. If you don't contribute enough to get it, you are flat out rejecting a guaranteed 50% to 100% instant return. That is free money. Step 2, hunt down those hidden fees. Swap expensive mutual funds for plain, boring, low-fee index funds that just track the whole market on autopilot. Stop buying strangers a boat. Step 3, automate your contributions and set them to bump up by just 1% every year. You won't feel the pinch today, but your future self will feel it like a winning lottery ticket. And step 4, honestly the hardest one, when the market inevitably crashes, do absolutely nothing. Ignore the noise.
Think back to the story of Cara and her dad, Ray. Here is the ultimate twist of this entire explainer. Cara actually has a massive advantage over her dad. Yes, the risk was dumped on her, but because she is holding the wheel, she gets the controls. She gets to ruthlessly cut her own fees, she gets to capture every penny of that match, and when everyone else panics, she gets to quietly buy the crash on sale. If she automates the boring stuff now, her eventual pile of money can completely dwarf any pension her dad was ever promised. You didn't ask for this job. You were voluntold to be your own fund manager. But the transition is permanent, the wheel is in your hands, and you finally have the map. So the only question left to answer is, now that you know you're holding the wheel, where will you drive the bus next? Don't let the system drive you. Take a look at your accounts today, make those tweaks, and take back your financial future. Thanks for joining me on today's Explainer. Catch you next time.